All right, guys, welcome to the third episode of the T&W podcast. Um, as you know by now, probably, I'm Kevin Wang. This is Neville Thomas.
What's up? Good morning.
Yeah, so let's just get into it. We kind of decided beforehand that we are going to talk about markets to start off with. Um, I don't know, what's your opinion of it right now? It's currently still around the all-time high, and
I do see that it's at an all-time high, and actually, I was actually curious, and I was like looking into it. And if you just look at some just like baseline charts, like short-term wise, you start to see that there's more of a dip, not just on a day-to-day, but what and like I think one of the biggest articles, like the market just opened up yesterday, right, for the 2021 New Year, and if you look at like I at least I know on like my end, like the whole algorithms and stuff for each one of the different websites, they were all telling me it's more of like all these different investors. They're even in the market crash of 2020, they're receiving these amazing returns, which I think that's really amazing. That shows good signs and it's more promising for the future.
was that
Um,
based on hedging then, or because if you can't really make a return in a market unless you're hedging?
I think you. I
on
think
a
hedging is
crashing market, just to
well.
specify.
Well, I think hedging doesn't guarantee that you're always going to make money, but hedging just guarantees that like it's more of taken as like an insurance policy. You take like worst case scenario, if something terrible happens to you or your family, you take an insurance policy, right? To take care so that it takes care of your loved ones. And I think that's kind of like how um like why people buy gold, silver, and I guess this brings up a curious thought process. And Kevin, I want your opinion on this. And it's about Bitcoin and like cryptocurrency in general. Do you believe cryptocurrency as a hedge, or or do you feel that it's too young for it to be a hedge?
To be a hedge.
To be a hedge, such as
Um,
gold and silver.
I think it is. hmm, I think it's growing. Is it a good hedge? Personally, I believe it is probably better than our traditional method of hedging, because the traditional, like, the calls and basically just the options trading is what is traditionally used for hedging. That has become less of a insurance policy and more of just trying to bring the biggest returns. So it's moved away from its roots as a hedge and more towards just a platform for returns. So to actually try and have like a hedge to, you know, like survive a crashing market, I think crypto is a good way to go. Mainly just because it's been around for a couple years now, and it's had its ups and downs, but so has the stock market. It's I would say it's fairly stable.
Well, here's what I would say, and I kind of like I've gone back and forth on it, and I just want to play devil's advocate. It's the fact of this, like you said, like more like Bitcoin is like and like cryptocurrencies being seen more of as like an investment vehicle, something where people can grow their money, not something and like a hedge is typically seen as something that will protect their money um if things go bad, right? Like it
Yes.
is the one thing that'll go up when everything else is going down. And I think like with cryptocurrency being seen as like an investment vehicle for people to grow their wealth over time, I don't know if you can necessarily call it a hedge because like even with like gold and silver, like you can mine for it, but you can't make more of it. So it like protects against inflation, but it's also the fact that you are like people are more willing to run to gold and silver because they're not looking at it not necessarily always as an investment. Not necessarily always. Let me put it that way. And for a majority of people, but rather they're looking at more of as something that'll protect them from the government printing out more money or any other types of conflicts, so that it's not fiat money,
hmm
which is interesting. So, I guess Kevin, I wanted to bring this off to one of the articles that we brought up, and it was the Fidelity article where they're trying to turn day traders into long-term investors. And they're doing that by bringing up these, at first, providing. My understanding is more of like providing these services like no transaction fees and commission-free trades. Yes, like where you don't have to pay anything to complete a trade. However, we're coming to a point where uh, but then the way they're going to make more money is with later services such as advice planning, and aspects like that, which can be expensive.
Right.
So, but then when you have companies like M1 Finance, Robinhood, apps that are more popular to, I guess, people in our generation, Gen Zs, and the people who are millennials, how do you feel about like Fidelity and like their future as a company in general, with the services they
Um,
provide and the stability they have?
I think it mainly just depends on the quality of service. I'm sure they provide a really good one, but just from how I mean, how I would personally do it and how I see a lot of other people doing it is you would, of course, do your own background research. And for lower sums of money, like say anywhere from like, I don't know, a couple hundred to a couple thousand, you might want to just do it yourself. Um, for anything higher than that, they might go to Fidelity for, like you said, the advising and things like that, which would bring more money. But since day traders, at least currently, seem to, well, most of the day traders right now, right? They're day trading because they're at home and they typically don't have like way too much money in there. So I don't think they would transition quite as much because it's like, why would you spend hundreds on advising when that's already like half of what you're trading right now?
Well, I think what it comes down to is the fact that um, I think one thing that was talked about is like undervalued stocks, especially now and during this time period, such as uh, like if you look at different, like we see the S&P 500 going up, but stocks that it was said, I believe I saw this like yesterday, where it's like some of the top stocks like Tesla, and like very like Microsoft, any of those like high value stocks, their prices always seem to just keep on going up and up, right? But if you look at the rest of the
Yes.
S&P 500, you see they're not recovering as fast. But if you look at the S&P 500 as an overall index, you think, oh wow, we're doing better than we were, right? So right now we see, like for example, I think like the airline industry, hospitality, such as
Isn't the thing with that
casinos.
though is that the top, you said you mentioned the S&P 500. Isn't it like the top something like 12%? I'm not sure about the hard statistics here, but like the top 12% is doing really well while the bottom so amount is doing way below average.
I believe it was. I'm not completely sure on the statistics either. Please don't. And so yeah, but there is a difference in the stocks, right? And there's a lot of seriously undervalued stocks out there. And so I think that's one thing that's like important to note. And so I think there's a possibility where when things start getting better, money starts leaving those types of stocks. Like, and we've already kind of sort of seen that a little bit when the vaccine coming out and the hopes of a vaccine, and the progress being made on that front. Uh, Money was leaving more of tech areas such as Zoom, Netflix, areas like that, and they were growing in and I guess other companies, things that were typically undervalued as they are right now, because they just haven't been making money. Businesses that are reliable, such as hospitality and leisure, but have not been able to make their money because we're just in the middle of this pandemic. And we're slowly, knock on wood, not trying to jinx anything here, but we're at a point where we're trying to get out of it. And we're making more significant progress than before, especially with a vaccine. So I guess here's my question. Is it possible where are we moving to a new point where our generation is gonna be more filled with day traders instead of long-term investors? like people planning out for like retirement, or maybe they might use retirement accounts, but still they are day trading instead of like what we were previously always told. Put your money in a good index or like a set of indexes and then just balance it for the next 30-40 years.
I mean, I think I would just chalk that up to people wanting to make money fast. That's just my opinion, but I don't know. Mainly, at least for myself, the semi day trading stuff I do, where I'm like finding stocks that I think will go up or go down, just based on like news and what I know of the market and stuff like that. And then usually I don't hold on to it for more than a year. So yeah, that's day trading. But that's mainly because I don't have much money and it wouldn't really hurt me that much to lose a couple $100 because it's just a couple $100.
Okay. See, my thing is I like Kevin, I commend you for that. I personally don't I'm not trying to be rude, but I don't have the time. Like I don't think I would have the time or the patience for it. And so it's like for me, it's just more of like just go long term, where it's like putting it in separate funds, index funds I personally love, and just putting it in and like letting it sit. And like long term wise, right now we're 20, but when we're more like 60 and 40 years has gone by, like that $5 latte that people always use as a stereotypical item, like it amounts to something bigger. I'm not saying people have to start cutting out their $5 lattes. No, again, that's all personal preference. However, you can just see like that substantial growth over the long term, which I think is great, especially when you're trying to be like passive. And like I believe like with the market and stuff, it's very like money is 80% emotional, and so it's how I guess you manage through that and move forward is something that's curious. Um, there was another article that we saw, and I think this is really cool. So I think we can take a move out of personal finance if that's okay with you, Kevin. And that was the Fiat Chrysler merger with the PSA Group down
Isn't
in
this
France.
okay?
And so yes, like typically they're known as Piaget. If I really hope I did not just mispronounce that.
Maybe butchered a little. Don't know.
Just a little, just a little. Come on, right?
Yeah.
But this is very interesting.
Yeah, that's good to see. FCA is already, pretty merger heavy, but
they're a strong company.
Yeah.
And so, and them joining up with another group in France is a very interesting tactic. So there was one thing that particularly stood out to me, and it was the fact that this is earlier before FCA became FCA, when Chrysler was just Chrysler, and in the 2008 financial crisis, Fiat came in, and that was when the merger happened with Fiat buying Chrysler. And I'm not completely sure on the full details, but they had both joined together. So there was a brand of Italy and there was a brand of the US put together. And now with PSA, it's more of France, which is more of in the Europe market. And I think that's kind of interesting. And so one of the things that was said was how it allows for more opportunities to, I guess, like spread more in the European market, which is interesting that they say that, because like with Fiat having a presence in Italy and Piaget having a presence in France, yes, I understand like they'll have presences in other areas, but that's where they originated from, France and Italy, right? Why is it that more of, what are the particular benefits of being more of in the European market? I guess that's my first question.
What are the benefits?
Yeah, being more in the European market, join if they already both have a presence. At least with Chrysler and FCA having a presence in both countries, even at a little bit right now.
I mean, at the end of the day, expansion is expansion,
Okay.
That's my opinion. It's like, what is it? Yeah, it's basically expansion is just expansion. It's not like, well, it might play into maybe sometimes just based on the taste of the market. Maybe the European market just prefers these cars. I'm not no expert on that. I don't know anything about this, but that could be part of it. Personally, I just think it's trying to capitalize more on the uh, I don't know, just the benefits they both have and the sort of advantages they both have.
So then here's my question now. You're right. We're not experts on this. We're college business students trying to understand more of the world and provide our interpretation on it. But as supply chain students, how do you feel about like with the company getting bigger?
Mhm.
What are your initial thoughts on a supply chain aspect? Since FCA in itself is a global company.
Well,
Um,
my personal thoughts are there's going to be a lot of SCM jobs opening up in there for the first couple of years, just to
really?
try and yeah,
Okay.
because
Why is that?
they have two completely separate supply chains. They're going to need to figure out how to combine those and take the best parts of each and combine them and expand them too, because the best parts of both companies are still again geared towards one company, not one large company, I guess. So um, there's going to be a lot of supply chain demand coming from there, and then after a couple of years, I think it would go down quite a bit, of course. But there's a lot of opportunities there. Another thing is obviously standardization is always simpler. So just by standardizing it, they could, take advantage of economies of scale and have one facility producing everything they need for both. I guess, at least for certain parts.
Okay, so that's interesting. So then, here's my next part, and I'm curious also to hear about this on a supply chain aspect. So the first one is, uh, the question is about the Asian market, and it was said about New York.
Oh yeah, that one.
Asian
Okay,
market is an
so
area where they're not that spread far. I've typically visited India, because my that's where my family comes from, and like even then, I don't know if I've seen many Chrysler cars, if any. I've seen if I'm speaking more about U.S. companies, I've seen a few GM. I've seen
really,
yeah, very few Chevy, very few Ford. Uh, a few, if I'm speaking more on a European aspect, a few Renault. Renault. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. And I've seen more, but and I believe I've also seen a few of like a few Fiat here and there, but for a large part, at least in the Indian market, I've seen from where I've lived, like Toyota has a big presence there, and there's a respect for Toyota. Granted, Toyota also makes quality products. Um, all these companies all make quality products, and but Toyota is more like that's one of the most popular ones that I've seen there. And then there's some more like Indian brands there, which also are great products like Mahindra, um, companies like that, or like Suzuki. I'm not sure if that one's specifically an Indian brand.
but
However,
yeah, that's what you
that
said.
company makes quality cars. So,
I
and that,
mean, I guess from my perspective, because I've been to China a few times, but it's kind of like you said how there's not quite a lot of Fiat cars. Um, you mentioned a few American brands. Would you say those are more common, or
I'm
were
sorry,
Indian brands way more common?
I'd say Indian brands were way more common
Yeah, that's
than the American
definitely.
brands.
Were there any luxury cars though? What
There
was
were
the luxury car?
some of those cars can be luxury cars. Like there's luxury versions of them. Are you speaking about
I
like
mean, like
the U.S.
like
brands?
Ferrari.
Oh,
No, not US. I'm talking about like Ferrari, Mercedes, BMWs,
I saw a
those
few
types of things.
Mercedes, BMW. I personally have not seen a Ferrari in India. I'm not saying that there aren't. There probably are. Um, Granted, however, if I'm seeing more like luxury vehicles, it would be more like a Mercedes, a BMW. I can't speak on behalf of Lexus, although I wouldn't doubt it. I could, if I had a bet, I would probably say that Lexus is also probably in India, since Lexus is a part of Toyota, and Toyota in itself has a big brand presence in India. So having a Lexus brand and that level of quality that's brought in is probably something that is very likely over there. But I
Okay.
guess here's the thing: being this new merger and being bigger, like there's the connection of the US market from the FCA and the Italian market, but also PSA coming in with a France market and these new availabilities and merging that all together, does this allow them to have, I guess, like more pricing power, bring more availability, more vehicles, and like more availability to, I guess, the Asian market in like
I
Asian
mean,
countries to get their presence known
I
because
would
they
say the
have more to
majority
spend.
of Asian countries is, well, China really. That's where all the automotive sales in Asia are mostly centralized. Of course, there's automotive sales in like India, Japan, Korea, so on and so forth, but China is the big market everyone's trying to get into. And for that, not really, no. Pricing power is not. See, the thing with Chinese cars is, it's been long suspected that China intentionally devalues the currency. We're not going to get into that because that's just politics. But basically, what that causes is that the average Chinese salary is comparably 6 times smaller than the average U.S. salary. So that means that they,
Um, the average, uh, the average, I believe, was the U.S. household, or maybe it
yeah,
was the U.S. individual, but it was around $50,000.
yeah, assuming
Um,
the average U.S. Household makes $50,000, right? And it's about let's see here, average Chinese household is, let's see here. Okay, it's around the same. It's around 30 to 50,000 yuan. Here's the thing though, yuan is, it's the, was it? The exchange ratio is 1 to 6. 1 US dollar is 6 yuan. So that means that of those 30 to 50,000 yuan, I mean that's
dividing that
still,
by six, that's
yeah,
on.
that's
This is
like
me just rounding
5,000,
up.
5,000
Yeah,
to
it's
6. That's like
5,006 level.
2 to 6 years of salary just to afford one of these cars, right? So at least in that lower to middle income, um, FCA and PSA are just directly competing against those Chinese brands who are not selling at an overseas cost; they're selling at the Chinese cost. Um, while on the other hand, you do see the luxury cars. Like, where do those Ferraris come from? Why are there BMWs and things like that over there? It's because those are on the higher end. You know, once you get to the higher income, it doesn't really matter how large the price tag is. It matters more the value and prestige it brings. So
So
that's
then,
why I don't see FCA or PSA breaking into that too much.
so then I've got two questions, and one of them I had, but I guess this brings up something that's different. First aspect is this. It is so in the article it talked about how like with FC and PSA joining forces together, they have the possibility of having of like being able to like share technology, share ideas and technology, and like so it's like more minds are being put together on like and like they have more capital put on ventures like electric vehicles. Like we understand like research and development for like these types of things, they are not cheap, they're extremely expensive, and so with the two companies joining forces, it's sharing ideas and it's sharing capital together, so that like they can move things forward, right? So my question then becomes, um can you allow for like are you able to, how do I put this, like is it possible where they're able to take the time and like understand, because you already have electric vehicle makers out there like Tesla and stuff, who have it, but if Chrysler and PSA are able to like share the technology, move it forward, and I guess like the first thing is just bringing out electric vehicles, but then at that point after that the second wave, if you want to call it, is where it becomes cheaper. And like I mean like this same idea can be related back to like personal finance, where originally you had like these different companies that allowed for people to invest and they just paid $5, but then Robinhood came and said, okay, you know what, you can do, it's commission free trades, we're not even going to charge you the $5, you can do it for free, and that in itself brought more people involved, right? So in this case I guess taking that similar ideology where first it's bringing out a new product to the market, but then it's making it cheaper, to the market. Is it possible where there's still, if the product has come out to the market, yes, it's a little bit off here and there, but there are electric vehicles out. People are buying them, not at the rate at which we're hoping for, and we hope for more growth. But is it possible now that FC and PSA, them joining together, will allow for that next wave of making those cars more cheaper, more affordable, allowing for like encompassing a lot more consumers? Because if you can make it cheaper, you can get a lot of consumers behind you, right?
Yes. Um, I don't know. Well, here's the thing though. If you look at it, right, the amount of quote unquote cheap cars are actually decreasing. So it wouldn't quite make sense for FCA to move towards a market that they're moving away from already, right?
Could you
So the cheap cars I define as, at least in the American market, as anything under 10,000 or like 10,000 area and under, right? Those cars are becoming less and less frequent. It used to be that the majority of cars you would see on the road are that, but now there's only a few car models offered around that price range, and the majority of the rest are 20,000 or above. So just based on that price range that you're looking at, that would still be 2 to 4 times, like even what we consider cheap would be 2 times the average household salary.
Well, then here's my question. If well, okay, in the US, here's the thing. There's a few factors that come into play. When you're manufacturing stuff in the US, it's known to be more expensive,
Yes.
right? But it's also like, at least in the US, like one of the things I was talked about was like the FCA's uh, Jeep and Ram brands are one of their strongest brands that they have. Having brands like that are like if when you think of a Jeep and you think of a Dodge Ram is what? It's a truck, right? At least in the US right now, we're at a point where we enjoy big vehicles, trucks, SUVs. There's more of, I guess you can say, favoritism towards those types of vehicles rather than a fuel efficient car, right? Because there's more you can do if you have a family. Like I know for like my family, like we have a car, but we also have a minivan. Um, and like granted, we're a family of four. And when we travel together, we most likely take the minivan because it's more comfortable. And if we go to the store and we buy other like groceries and stuff, it's a spacious vehicle to put items in, right? And that's also possibly the same thinking that people are having when they buy SUVs and trucks. That's more popular in the US. If FCA is able to, I guess, would they need, if they're able to partner up and increase their supply chain, instead of just bringing cars over, working with a company over there that already does manufacturing and starts manufacturing their cars in some sort of a partnership, is it possible that they're able to uh, join into this market?
Um, I'm personally still of the opinion that they won't, just because you can't bring prices low enough to compete with local Chinese manufacturers.
No, but it's more of like, if you can't beat them, join them type of situation, where if they can't bring cars
Are you talking about
overseas,
like another merger with a Chinese company?
or it doesn't necessarily have to be a merger, just working with another company that does manufacturing there.
Well, that's what they do. Most large manufacturing and automotive companies, they enter a 50-50 partnership with a local producer to get their cars produced and sold. However, it's still way too expensive because here's the thing: if you produce a car that is around the same make and model, but you sell it for cheaper in China, since it's such an expensive sort of product, people will be willing to travel to China to buy one there. Does that make sense? Like,
I don't know if I can agree with that. Like somebody from the US willing to travel to China
yeah.
just to buy a vehicle.
No. Here's the thing, right? if they want to be comparable and like competable, right? Competitive, right? So cheap Chinese cars go for like a couple $1,000s, or at least like what is it? A couple like 10, 20,000 yuan, right? Which is comparable to about 3,000 USD. That's dirt cheap for a new car. So if you want to compete with that, well, that's on the cheap end. If you want to compete with that in China, you're gonna be selling like 40,000 yuan, maybe like, I don't know, 100,000 yuan or something like that. That's still like 6,000 to like $15,000. Would you travel? Would you spend like 1,000 or two to travel to China just so you can get that like $10,000, $20,000 discount? Of course you are.
Well, there's a lot of factors at play at that point, and I don't,
Yeah,
and I
there's a lot of
personally,
import taxes. There's a lot of issues there, but still,
yeah, there's a lot of moving. Here's the thing: it's not as simple as that, and there's a lot of moving factors for a group of people to be able to do that, let alone one person.
yeah.
Like somebody who's willing to do that is somebody who's like a car enthusiast, and they can only get some car which is in Dubai. Like, apologies. Like
No, no, I'm talking about
it
like
it
if you had a car you wanted, right? Would you be willing to travel to another country so that you can pay 70% of what it costs?
I don't
The
believe the
same car.
vast majority of Americans would be able to do that.
Really?
Would be willing to do that. No, I personally do not.
Well, if you think about it, just think about it, right? 30% of a new car, at least in the US, is anywhere from what? 3,000? Well, no, not 3,000. It's anywhere from like 5,000 up to what, like 10,000 if you're going for like the lower end. If you're thinking of like Ferraris and stuff like that, you're looking at like maybe dozens of thousands,
I'm sorry. What is for dozens of thousands?
like Ferraris and things like that.
Well, here's the thing: how many average Americans are how many Ferraris does the average American own? It's
I mean,
very
like
small. It's like
point
point 0.1
one.
possibly.
Yeah.
Like which is trying to show that the average American is not owning a Ferrari. Kevin, I don't own a Ferrari. Okay. Do you own a Ferrari, Kevin?
No,
Okay.
maybe one
Um
day, but
yeah,
you know.
the goal is one day, right? The goal is always one day. But the thing is that's not something that's practical. If you're moving more of into a market where you're providing quality cars and at a
Mhm.
cheaper price, like that's when you become extremely competitive. And I think that's one of the things that Toyota's done really well with. They provide
Yes.
quality vehicles, I'm not saying any of the car companies don't. I'm saying they all do. They provide quality vehicles, but like Toyota's still able to match it with the type of like the price range. Imagine because they've got to deal with all sorts of additional costs that a domestic company might just not have to deal with.
Yeah.
And they're still sticking with their price. Apologies where you are.
No, I'm saying, okay, they can probably produce cars at a cheaper price, right? But if they lower the price globally enough to enter the Chinese market, they are literally throwing away profits
Well, they're not gonna.
because they would be losing sales, or they wouldn't be losing sales. They'd be losing profit margins on the car in like Europe and the US, which is where they are based, right? However, if they only lower price in the specific region, Asia in this case, if they're only lowering price there, people in the US and Europe would be not everyone, but people would be willing to travel to Asia to get that massive discount on their cars.
I don't know if I can agree with that. But then here's my question. Let's put a different situation on the table. We've been talking about that PSA and Fiat have to bring their prices down, right?
Oh yeah.
We know that these guys we know that at least for FCA they make quality vehicles. Is it possible where they come in and they bring in a new level? My yawn. The audience, I apologize for my yawn. I'm not sure what got to
Like
me.
a new level of quality, or
Yeah, something. But either way, back to the topic is like something where you said that there's a difference between like the small vehicles right there, which are meant to be cheap and easy to buy, and then people who like if you're trying to get to the level of already what these importers bring, at that point you have enough money to buy a Ferrari, and the price tag really doesn't matter. Is it possible where there's something more of like in the middle, where people are able to come up, or they're able to make more money, and as a result, buy something it's not as nice as a Ferrari, but get something like a Chrysler vehicle, right?
A what vehicle?
A Chrysler vehicle.
Okay.
So it's like a middle level of luxury,
Okay.
right? Or Fiat or like FCA in itself, they offer Alfa Romeo, right?
They
Alfa
also
Romeo,
offer Maserati.
Maserati, exactly. Those are two brands that are extremely expensive, and that'll
Yep.
allow them to, I guess, fulfill that top level. But is it possible where there's a new middle? Let me put it that way. The possible even new middle.
Like a new, well, I'm personally still of opinion no. At least just from my personal opinion, personal experience, because from what I see in the, at least in the Chinese car market, right? It's either cheap or it's expensive, and there's no middle ground. Because the Chinese middle class, from what I can see, is globally not the middle class. They don't have the spending power of the global middle class. So that means that there's in the wealth divide between the Chinese middle class and the Chinese upper class. Chinese middle class can't afford these traditional middle class vehicles, while the Chinese upper class can afford both the middle class, but they choose to buy the upper class vehicles. For example, um, for most of the Chinese students, at least international Chinese students, I see that come here. They're either, well, you could split them up into 2 or 3 categories, right? They're extremely wealthy, or they're extremely studious, or they're extremely wealthy and extremely studious. Extremely studious types don't have cars. Extremely wealthy cars have, I mean, extremely wealthy students have like Ferraris, Lamborghinis, BMWs. I know this because I had this, what is it, this international student friend, and then sometimes I would go over to his apartment and he'd be like, oh yes, that's my friend's Ferrari, and like, oh, this other friend drives like, Lamborghini, and I'd be like, what? Like,
I've talked with a few people, and like for like some call it like Ferraris, Lamborghinis, like
yeah.
yeah,
So it's
I've seen
either
that.
super
I
high
understand
end
that.
or super low end, and I don't think there's any middle ground there.
See,
But
that's the thing.
regardless of that, I want to touch on something else in this article, right? So
Okay.
on the merger, it said, it's like, I don't know, just like a couple paragraphs down from the top. It said that FCA shareholders will receive a cash distribution of $1. Well, it's in euros, so 1.84 euros per share.
Okay.
That's like 10%.
What do you mean?
You're getting 10% of the FCA stock.
Can you explain like what your like I guess comment is? Like
Okay.
I'm not following with you. I'm not
Okay, so
following.
from my understanding, right?
Okay.
This is just, I might have a flawed understanding here, but from my understanding, this means that for every share of FCA you hold on the day before the merger closes, right? You get $1. They pay you $1.84, or it's euros, but whatever the equivalent is.
Okay. I'm not completely sure. I guess like what the full implications are. So that's why.
Oh, that the implications there is they're giving you 10% of the stock in cash because the stock is around $18, right? That means that they're giving you 10% in cash for just during the merger.
So they're giving people who still own FCA stock cash,
Yeah.
and they still keep their stock.
Yeah.
So it's more like a dividend.
Yeah, but like a massive dividend. Like dividends are
Okay.
usually like 2 to 3%. This is 10%.
Well, I mean, I was reading a book. I was reading The Ride of a Lifetime by Bob Iger. He was the former CEO of Disney.
Oh yeah.
They were talking about, I believe, when they were trying to acquire a portion of Fox. I believe, yeah, it was Fox. It was, and that when they were like competing against Comcast and stuff, like they were giving like a half cash, half. Forgive me if I'm getting some of the details of this like a bit wrong, but they were doing stocks, but they were also doing some like cash, handling,
Like
and I
dividends or
I think it was dividends. I'm not completely sure. So, but it's not uncommon. Like this is just 10%, so that's not uncommon. For just that much stock to be given. And I personally, I wouldn't. I mean, I'd say that's great. Investors are getting something more, and that's good to hear. So I guess I think like we have like exhausted this FCA PSA topic a lot.
all right.
And I guess it's something like we're gonna need to go into more later on when we get more info, if we do. Um,
Excellent
Kevin, where
then.
would you like to go next?
Um, let's go on to the union actually.
The union. Okay, so Google employees, out of what I've skimmed over this article and I was reading it last night. Also, I was like, so Google employees are looking to form a union. Kevin, do you want to expand on this article?
Okay, so they expanded. I mean, they did form a union. It's
Oh, they
spelled
did.
out.
Okay.
Okay, it's the Alphabet Workers Union, which is, because the Google's parent company is Alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, let's see here. Apparently, it is supported by the Communications Workers of America, which, from what I understand, is also another union. And basically, unions are pretty rare in, at least in terms of tech companies. Unions tend to be centralized around like more labor, so manufacturing, railroad, dock workers, things like that. But tech is, there's not a lot of unions in tech, so this is actually a pretty big major development. And
Mm-hmm.
another thing was that this surprised me because I always thought Google working conditions were pretty good because I know they had like they had a lot of infrastructure in place for the employees, like cafeterias just for the employees, and then like things like that. But apparently most of the Google employees formed this union due to issues like apparently sexual harassment in the workplace, and then additionally work like military work with the Pentagon. For example, I think there's work on drone strikes, precision drone strikes that they weren't comfortable with, and then um, just how they handled sexual assault claims and just biases in algorithms. So apparently that's what's going on there. What's your opinion of this?
Well, I think when it comes to like all, I mean, like anything that's being done wrong, I mean, like there should be like punishment for it. Like sexual assaulting, that's like we're not condoning it at all. That's not condoned. That shouldn't be condoned. And so I think I'm more curious to see like what this brings from it. We see like there's like a lot of movements out there where it's um you have movements of like just bring like when there was like the Me Too movement where people were supporting one another. Um, and obviously there's two different sides you can see on it, which is that's everybody's opinion, but that was more of just uncovering out different incidences that have happened. And there were like different aspects, and I think like in this day and age, it's becoming more apparent. Like people are more willing to come forward. They're not because they know that there are other people who will support them. There are resources there for them. And I'm not saying that we still don't have growth to do. I believe we do. We always have. There's in every single aspect. I personally believe there's always growth. There's always another level you can go. There's always more we can always do.
So is it your
Um,
opinion that this always has been happening at Google? They just didn't
I don't know.
come out
I
with it
don't
before?
know, and I don't want to say it on that because I don't know.
Okay.
What I'm saying is just on like a human aspect. not at Google, not just on a Google aspect, like we like on a cultural aspect, we have been moving towards where there's a movement towards integrity is what I'd say.
Okay.
An integrity of an aspect of if something is wrong, if you see something that's going wrong, people are willing to say it. This is wrong. This
Okay.
is not right. And it's they're like and that there's less amount of people who are afraid of I'm not saying that there isn't still, but like oh my boss is going to be mad at me or my boss is going to fire me. Like I'm personally a person who's I'm a people pleaser. That is naturally who I am. Right? So which makes me like still like oh I don't want to make my like boss mad, I don't want to make my coworkers upset or anything like that. However, like as a culture, we have been moving into saying if there's something that is going wrong, report it, say it, so that this can be looked into because something worse can possibly go wrong. Um, but what I'm curious to know is this: like back in our like when our grandparents were workers, at least like in the U.S., if like if when our parents were students, and they were asked in a classroom, how many of your parents are in a union? Almost all the hands would go up. Now, when parents go to like when teachers ask, let's just say how many of your parents are in a union, probably like a fifth will put their hands up because there's just like people who have been moving away from unions, right? And typically, like you see that more like teachers, police officers, like those are more like public servants who have unions now. Like you see a lot of those, and again, like manufacturing and areas like that. Um, but I guess is this? I guess I want to get like, is this possibly moving with Google is such a prominent company. It is a well-known company. It is a company that people would love to work at, and like again, people would like to have like the Google experience. If Google employees are forming a union, does this possibly set like a stepping stone as a foundation for other companies and their those employees to form a union? It's not like a union wasn't impossible, but it's more of like a role model. Like when you have an older sibling, you go, wow, my big brother, my big sister, they did this. Or just our parents. We look at our parents like, wow, they did this. So I want to be like my dad. I want to be like my mom.
So you're
And I
saying
want
they're
to do that. Like it
unionizing because there's an example set or like a
like
framework set
can
before
this
them?
possibly set up like an example? Like a big brother example. It's like, whoa, Google employees set up a union. Why can't we? Different companies and different like settings that
Okay. Okay. I see.
does this possibly move into that kind of a space?
Um, I'm sure it will. I mean, other companies have unionized before. It's just rare in the tech. I guess
I mean,
since this is the first. Well, it's not the first, but it's a very large company that has unionized.
it's a
So
prominent company. Google's a
yeah.
very prominent company.
So
So
I'm sure that does set examples for people. Um, I don't know. It does give off that aspect, but I'm sure it's not the main reason. Obviously, they unionized because they were protesting work conditions or what they were working on. Um, I don't know.
I guess here's my question to you, and that where does the comfortability lie? They say that they were working on military projects that they were uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
Where is the right between the employee and where is the right between the company itself? Where an employee can refuse and a company can say, no, but you must do this because I'm still compensating you for this job and this is the job I hired you for. I guess where's that line between being able to say no and have still having to do working for the Pentagon if I don't know. I'm not sure if this is true, but I guess like allegations of working for the Pentagon and or just doing projects that you personally are not morally comfortable with on a um like on a company aspect. So I guess
I
where
mean,
does that lie?
that I believe just lies with management. I don't know where it's ultimately up to management to make the decision where the line between ethics and the company comes in.
Well, I
because
mean,
it's neither side is doing something that's obviously wrong. It's not like the
mhm.
management is forcing like people to work on military contracts. It's they have to do that to make profits to keep these employees on to keep the company healthy. But the
Yeah,
employees are also right in that you can't just expect people to work on something to kill someone else.
it's more.
So
It might be not. It might not be on their moral compass. Let me put it that way.
yeah, it's ultimately up to management to make a decision whether something is moral or not, whether it's something that their company wants to stand by. Um, that's just my opinion on it. I think we're pretty exhausted on this topic, mainly just because we covered just like
I
this one,
actually
the
can I bring
unions.
up one thing, if that's okay, right
Yes.
before we move off this, and it's one thing that's been said is like on the grand scheme, I'm not talking like Google or a specific company, just on a grand US scheme, like the rise in wages have been decreasing.
Yeah.
If we have more unions created, like where people say, oh, Google employees created a union. Why can't we? An XYZ company will do that. Or some other companies start to do that. Does this allow, or is it, will forming a union be more motivational because it allows for the possibility of getting rises in wages? Because like there's power in numbers, as like it's always been said, like there's power in numbers. So I guess with more unions, does that become more attractive because people can have people can make more money?
Uh, I don't know. I don't think unions are fighting for wages as much, at least in tech, because it's well known that wages in tech are one of the highest, at least in all industries so far. Um, I know that other unions, like auto workers and things like that, factory workers, they are fighting more for wages, mainly because wages just aren't enough to support like a living family anymore, at least in those industries, which is it makes sense for a union to fight for that. But I don't know about so much for tech, because
Okay.
unions just fight for the interests of
The
the worker.
employees.
Yeah, and I don't think the money is one of the problems. The problems is just what's going on in the workplace.
Okay. Okay. I guess this is also something that's like, going to be really interesting to see. Hopefully things go well. Um, I wish everybody on all aspects the best of luck. So then I guess this leaves our last article, which is about the healthcare venture, which is now going to be stopped. And this was a work between Berkshire Hathaway, Amazon, and
JP Morgan.
JP Morgan Chase, which is interesting.
So
And
three big names.
yes, three extremely big names, three very smart leaders: Warren Buffett, Jeff Bezos, and Jamie Dimon. Uh, all three, I personally, I respect them all. They have all, they are all very smart. They're very goal oriented, and they truly do want things to become better. And that's in the quality of the products, the value that they bring, and like if you just watch like some of their interviews, like it's so profound and they're interesting their mindset. So, but now after 3 years, they are leaving this industry space. I'm not yes, Amazon themselves are moving into like selling some prescription drugs. No, I sorry, correction on that. I don't believe it's like prescription drugs. No opioids. Just like things that I believe my understanding is more of like over the counter small medicine. Um, but their venture into the healthcare space is still being like the three company move is being stopped.
Yeah.
How does it like what are your thoughts, I guess, then on the healthcare space?
I mean, just
If
from reading through this, seems like the problem was that well, it was just too big of a task for the
Mhm.
this joint venture to do. Um, which was that there's just too many problems with the healthcare system right now, and there's too
Okay.
much to do with the so much resources. My opinion is, I mean, it was a valiant effort. But the main problem, or at least my opinion, is it's not it can't solve enough problems. It's just that there's too many problems produced by our society, basically.
Okay.
Just like there's too many, the way that society is set up and how like food consumption and like things like vape. I don't know if that has anything to do because the whole thing that was going on about how vaping might cause some sort of lung disease, and then just various things like there's exercise is not, it's encouraged, but it's not like too too much of a societal norm, I guess. You see people exercising, there's gyms everywhere, but you still see the people who never exercise a day in their life, and so on and so forth. And these are all causing medical issues that are building up. And then same thing with the previous generations of smokers, and then just other things that are all like even occupations that are just causing medical issues. And the healthcare system isn't really designed to take on that, plus COVID, plus everything else.
Okay. So I guess here's the question: Is healthcare, should it be something that's simple, like, or like right now? I personally believe like it's complicated, yes, but I think it's like to a point because there's so many different people in this world, um because there's so many different people and there's like so many different
All right,
needs.
sorry for that.
All good. There's so many different people and there's so many different needs. Having is it possible to have a one systematic approach,
No.
or do we need such a complicated process just to fit for every single person? Like you
Uh,
said, like there's some people who never exercise but they are still they're extremely healthy, but there's some people who exercise a lot but they're so unhealthy. And so because there's all sorts of people on the spectrum and you need to take care of them all, it's so like it's complicated, right?
yeah.
Is that something that's going to last long term, or is this going to start becoming more simplified where some entrepreneur comes up with more of a simplified approach?
I believe it will still remain complicated. You can't just have one system for, well, I mean, you can try and have one system for all medical issues, but it
I
just
mean,
won't work.
it might not be one, but let's just say like instead of having like 700, you make it down to more like five. Or like when you buy a vehicle, they'll typically offer you, yeah, it's the same vehicle, but you'll have three different packages: level one, level two, and a level three. Level one gets you X amount of stuff. Level three gets you X plus Y. Level two, I mean, and then level three will get you X plus Y plus Z of all these wonderful items, whatever it may be, right? So, like, I guess taking that kind of like concept, maybe it's not one singular system, but there's at least like it's not so many, rather it's five, or there might be 10, like 10 or under. Let me put it that way.
Okay. Um, I don't know. I think that's kind of how the system is set up right now. There's the general hospital system, but there's also a lot of private hospitals with their own system. I currently think it's just way too complicated already, and that was probably the issue they ran into, at least with the Haven Health, which is the joint venture. I think that was the venture. That was the problem, was that it's way too complicated and there's way too many specific scenarios for them to be able to implement their general changes and improvements.
So then is if three great strategists and their companies couldn't do it themselves, then is it just set to be like this for the rest of time, or is there who needs to come in? Like what type of person? An entrepreneur? The government? Like what type of person slash institution or entity needs to come in to help resolve this issue?
I don't know. This is not something that I can make a call on. I don't even know enough to make a prediction. It could
Yeah.
be the government, but just based on everyone knowing healthcare needs to change. It could be entrepreneurs finding a better way to do this. It could be, I think that was what Haven Health was trying an entrepreneur approach. It could be just something else. It's that's nothing I can make a call on.
Okay. Okay.
What about
Well,
you? What's your opinion?
I hope it's an entrepreneur, because like then it'll provide more jobs, more availability, and plus when an entrepreneur is typically it seems like when an entrepreneur is able to do it, they because they're small and they're not like they still need to find a way to make it cheaper. They need to find a way to bring customers to something. Nothing's guaranteed when you're an entrepreneur, and everything is all risk. It's extremely hard. But if the right entrepreneur comes in, I believe this problem can be solved. But it all depends on him or her and the people that this entrepreneur has around them. And it's always about teams, right? Like what kind of great teams you have determines your success path. But that's it. Kevin,
Call.
is there anything else you have for today's podcast?
Nope, that was about it.
Okay, awesome. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us again for podcast number 3 of the T&W podcast. We are grateful to have you, and we will be putting episode number 4 up real soon. All right, everybody, have a nice day.